Hey, KLOVE. I was telling this story last week to Grant Hubbard at my label, and he thought that you might like to hear about the impact that your station had on me recently. We were in Charleston, West Virginia for the second to last night of the Hits Deep Tour. So this was in early April. And I'd gone walking that day. I got a great workout in. I was feeling great. I really felt like the Lord had been speaking to me while I was on it. But because I had gone exercising and because I spent a lot of time just kind of lingering out there, I was running really, really late to get dressed for the concert that night. And I went into the dressing room at the venue and I turned on the shower, and I just felt like I was frazzled because I felt like I couldn't get everything together that I needed to, and I was running really, really late. And I could not find, this is going to sound so silly, but I couldn't find my shower sponge, which maybe normally wouldn't have been a big deal, but I just gotten a pretty big sweat on and needed to take a really good shower. And so I couldn't find it. I was so frustrated. And as it turns out, something broke and the sponge actually rolled behind my wardrobe. And so that's why I couldn't find it. But in the middle of all of that, in the middle of being really frustrated and the shower's running and I'm rushing trying to get dressed, my singer and dancer, Sydney, she came into the dressing room and I took out all of my frustration on her. I was like, I can't find my sponge. I'm so angry. I'm so frustrated. And she was just like, what's going on? So anyway, I found my sponge. I got into the shower, and no sooner than I started showering, I felt the Holy Spirit say, you just snapped at Sydney, who had not done anything to you whatsoever. She just happened to be the first person who walked into the room. And my first thought was, no, I didn't. I didn't take it out on her. And then it dawned on me, yes, I did. Sid kind of got the brunt of all of my frustration in that moment. And I felt horrible because you may not know Sydney, but she's probably the sweetest person that you've ever met in your entire life. And so I was in the shower and I knew Sydney was in the dressing room getting dressed, and I just kind of yelled out, I'm sorry, Sid. And I didn't even hear what she said after that. But as I sat in the shower, I started getting that little voice in my head saying, you think that you're so good and so holy, and you're going around telling everybody that you're an unfinished masterpiece, but really, you're just the same person that you always have been. You snap on people. You don't treat people well. I just was hearing that little nagging voice in my head, and I started to believe it. I started to feel condemned and like I was a horrible person. And no sooner than I started listening to that voice that I hear the Holy Spirit saying, did you apologize to Sydney? And I said, yeah. And felt the Holy Spirit say, did you mean it? And I said, of course I did. And then I felt the Holy Spirit say, well, then you are forgiven, which should have been enough, but I kept beating myself up. And it was in that moment that I was listening to KLOVE on my KLOVE app, and the song Clean by Natalie Grant came on. And I had a holy moment in that shower because, you know, some of the lyrics are, there's nothing too dirty that you haven't made worthy. You wash me in mercy. I am clean. And I felt like God was really speaking to me in that moment. Then I got out of the shower, and Scott, it was the afternoon show, he started reading a quote by C.S. Lewis about friendship. And I just knew, I was like, Sydney needs to hear this. And so I ran out of the bathroom area and I was like, Sid, I don't know why, I feel like you need to listen to this. And so we listened to Scott do this quote about friendships and how when you're a Christian, that is the kind of friendship that God orchestrates. And so all of a sudden I noticed that Sydney started crying. And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that God was speaking to her through it. And so we just kind of sat there as we were putting on our makeup, and she's crying and she's trying to tell me about some of the stuff that's happening in her life. And I was explaining to her like what happened with my shower and my sponge. And it was just, it was a holy moment that I knew that God was in. Shortly after that, Zach Williams' song Chainbreaker came on, and I knew that that was really ministering to Sid in that moment because she was just going through something really difficult. And that song was really touching to her. Then right after that happened, you played my story behind my song, Unfinished, and it was as if God were saying, I know that you have all these emotions that are happening in your life right now, but I want to assure you, you are a masterpiece in the making, that you're just unfinished. And so I just wanted to encourage you. It was a series of about 15 minutes where God was speaking so clearly to me, and he used KLOVE to do so. So I just want to thank you for your ministry, and I want you to know that I appreciate you as a listener.